let's move you back to America.
Yeah.
Let's bring you to our church, which we really appreciate you coming here. It's been a blast. You started with Ephesians, and I was like, oh, he's starting with doctrine. I'm there, and then you get into where I get challenged, which is the application part. Mm-hmm. And then you've also taught on. You're in John right now, which I think you were watching our podcast because your last week's message, I was like, he's lifting stuff from us.
Yeah, he's stealing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm revealing a secret here, but I called Tony on Friday night. Tony, I need your help.
We had just filmed on Saturday, and I was like, he's talking about postmodernism. We were just talking about that. He's got a bug in our basement in the dungeon. So, and that's.
By the way, that you hit it out of the park on Sunday. That was a great message, and I appreciate that. That was really good. Yeah. So we should let people know where the website is. So
unfortunately we're gonna have to link to your messages. So.
Careful now. You don't want to lose your audience.
So then, picking back up in America, you have this experience. What are the changes that you saw? And obviously, you came back and visited, and you got married and had kids during that time as well. What does it look like today in the Church of America and in your slice of Kalamazoo, Michigan? And then I'll ask follow-up questions from there.
Yeah, so I think that the probably the number one observation that I would have, having been those years overseas and then coming back and ministering in the American context, is how little difference the economic blessings that we have matter spiritually. I made the comment earlier that human nature is the same wherever human nature is, right? And so, people's walk with the Lord and how they apply the Scripture to their daily life is really the key. And it's not the box they live in, right? The house. It's not the box they get places in their car. It's none of that. And I think that was really driven home just coming back to America and now ministering with and to people here in our context, and just realizing that as the Scripture says, a man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. All right, it really is the issue of the heart. And take a man or a woman who's walking with the Spirit, filled with the Spirit, right, and they'll have the fruit of the Spirit, whether they're, as Paul and Silas were, singing songs in prison. With joyful and happy hearts, or put someone in a mansion, not walk with the Spirit, and misery will result. And so, I think that's a key thing for people in the West to realize, is that we are far too focused on externals.
We have movies like that are coming out that are almost responses to American gospel, called American Gospel Part 1 and Part 2, and we'll link those in the description, that are really good. We see kind of the influence of money in the church as far as being the focus. Obviously, we don't do without money because we're more spiritually, greater. The old story of the monks not brushing their teeth or washing because that way they're shirking off the mortal coil more. Right. But kind of this word
they're separated. Movement.
Yeah, very
because
much
nobody wanted to come near them.
Yeah, that's why they put them behind walls.
It's one way to avoid it.
Yeah. So we see kind of this word faith movement, this prosperity gospel, becoming almost the what people are responding to as far as when they think Church of America. In fact, I think one of the biggest missionary adventures for people outside of America is coming to America to present the gospel, which is sad and tearful. I don't know how to describe how terrible that is, but it seems like that's what we're having to deal with as far as when someone says, "Oh, you're a Christian and you look like the people that we look like." Is that what you're finding too in kind of your ministry as at large, and not just specifically, but you're not bordered off in Michigan and Kalamazoo. You have other influences as well.
Yeah, I think I think this is a confused time in the U.S. Old systems are crumbling. No one knows what's going to replace them. So there's a lot of uncertainty. But I was reminded, just even telling the church staff just an hour ago, I think these are really exciting times. I think that everybody seems to be kind of wringing their hands and bemoaning that, statistically the millennial generation isn't responsive spiritually. I have a completely different view on that. I think that I believe we might be on the cusp of a third great awakening, and I think that the millennials may go down in history for something for things completely different than what are being discussed right now, because they're on Sunday as I was talking, there is this shift. I know you guys have been talking about it, and there's a major shift away from the postmodern worldview to a very moralistic worldview, and as I've interacted with millennials, I just yesterday had lunch with a young man who kind of earlier in life identified as a Satanist and now says he's a Stoic of all things, right? And I told him, I said, hey, you intrigue me. You're the first person in your young 20s who says that you're following an ancient Greek philosophy from the 3rd century BC, and it was and talk about just open to, I said, hey, Paul had an interaction with Stoic philosophers in Athens. You want to get together and talk about it? And he was very enthusiastic and open. And so I think that there's a lot more opportunity than what we're being told, right? The media especially is feeding us the sky is falling, mantra day in and day out. And sadly, I think that the church leaders and people in our congregations are believing that message. That's not the message of the Lord. That's not the message of Scripture. Jesus says, I will build my church. The gates of hell will not prevail against it. Lift up your eyes and look. The fields are wide unto harvest, right? Harvest is plentiful. The laborers are few. And we don't know. No generation knows. No context knows at what level the harvest will be, right? We don't know whether we'll be in a time of relative famine or relative feasting, right? And from a spiritual harvest standpoint. But what the Lord is reminding us there is that in every generation, in every context, there is a harvest, right? Lift up your eyes and look. The fields are white unto harvest. What the volume of that harvest will be, the Lord alone sovereignly knows. But we know there's harvest.
Yeah, I always say that youth must rebel against their parents. For my parents' generations, you had free love, free drugs. You had an ideal of we have to be against the Vietnam War, and then my generation rebelled against that, and so you had nihilism. You had cocaine. You can kind of progress American culture through drug use, and now we've shifted from postmodernism. There is no truth to social justice or justice. What does that mean in that context? So it seems like people who rebel against people that say we don't know the difference between a boy and a girl, it seems like the opposite way to rebel against that is saying, oh no, there's objective truth. And Stoicism, I think, will see a big rise in that, because there are people that are going to want to not declare things as true and wrong, but I think it's going to be how do you know what truth is? Mm-hmm. The pilot. What say you?
Yeah.
Is truth. So I think I think that there's always the ability to look down on the generation, but then as Titus 2 says, the older should look to serve the younger. And Tony's not that much older than me, but he's definitely the other iron that sharpens my iron. So.